Panzer Dragoon Orta for the Xbox is the fourth game in the Panzer Dragoon series, and if you didn't know, the Panzer Dragoon games are on-rails shooters, for the most part. The third game in the series, Panzer Dragoon Saga, is an RPG. Outside of Panzer Dragoon Orta, I've never played any of the Panzer Dragoon games. I feel like this is a detriment to my existence, and will one day rectify it. But Panzer Dragoon Orta is actually the easiest game in the series to find out in the wild, having come out on the Xbox after the Dreamcast rode off into the sunset, carrying with it all of Sega's dreams of console success. But how is the game? It's good. Real good. And today we're talking about it. So let's do this. The studio Smilebit developed Panzer Dragoon Orta for the Xbox. It's a company that had been constructed from pieces of other development studios when Sega was exiting the console business and consolidating their assets. It actually had a few members from the development teams that made the previous Panzer Dragoon games. And Panzer Dragoon is really fun to say. Panzer Dragoon, Panzer Dragoon, Panzer Dragoon. Panzer Dragoon Orta starts you out with a title and menu screen that has no music, just the sound effects for when you choose an option. It really threw me off when I first started playing this game. I thought maybe the Xbox wasn't hooked up correctly or something. Anyhow, once you start the game, you get this voiceover and text sequence giving you the backstory. An ancient civilization died 1,000 years ago, and now in modern day, an evil empire uses their technology to create bioengineered weapons called dragon mares, and oppresses the world's peoples. The game's story centers around a young girl living as a prisoner in a valley, her captors being the native people who think that she's going to bring about the end of the world. The Empire shows up, and just as the girl is about to start a long journey to becoming dragon poop, another dragon shows up and saves her. After a lengthy escape sequence, a strange character shows up and helps out. So I'm not going to lie to you, I actually tuned out most of the story, and there are essentially 3 reasons why that is. Reason number 1, I was drunk for the first third of the game. Reason number 2, the game isn't in English. I know that's a stupid reason for tuning out the story. I mean, I've played games in other languages before, and I've played games that consist only of text dialogue, but I just didn't care to read while pretty things were happening on the screen. Additionally, the backstory is given to you in straight-up voice-over narration, and it's boring. So it really just kind of turned me off, and I tuned it out naturally. Additionally, this is a pretty game, and I didn't feel much like reading when I could be looking at cool shit, you know what I mean? And finally, reason number 3, Panzer Dragoon Orta is the 4th game in the series, and despite being an on-rails shooter, there seems to be a substantial amount of lore to the games. I mean, the 3rd game was an RPG, so there's at least 60 to 80 hours of story and world that I missed just right there in that one game. It's not like I didn't understand what was going on in the game. I understood what was going on from one scene to the next, but all the backstory stuff I just didn't try too hard to make sense of. I felt like I needed to read a Wikipedia to get the full story, which I refuse to do for this review because it negates the uniqueness of my experience with the game. I could just say screw it and go in and rehash what Wikipedia says, but that is not how I experienced this game, and that is not my review. Now, saying that I tuned out the story is in no way a judgment of the story for the game. It's really just a simple story of a girl escaping a prison and going on an adventure, making allies with the native tribe, and finding that she has a secret lineage, and then destroying an evil empire. It's fine enough and motivates the gameplay. I wasn't weeping at the end or anything, although I did find it jarring. And spoiler warning. I found it jarring that your dragon simply drops dead at the end of the game for apparently no reason. I thought that perhaps I got the bad ending or something, but after the post-credit scene we find that Orta wanders off by herself and there is a new baby dragon with her, from somewhere. It's enough to make me really want to go back and play the other Panzer Dragoon games to see what the stories are, particularly Panzer Dragoon Saga. You know, the one that is so frippin' expensive, like it costs you 1/3 of your soul to get.
All this, if you will fall down and worship me.
Man, it is so tempting not to just buy this game. I want it so badly, but it is just so expensive. Panzer Dragoon Orta is an on-rail shooter, a genre which really doesn't exist anymore today. For those not in the know, an on-rails shooter has you moving in a set direction, shooting at things that pass by. If you've ever played Star Fox, then you've played an on-rails shooter. In Panzer Dragoon Orta, you get 3 dragons to play as. You can switch between each of these dragons on the fly because your initial dragon has the ability to transform. That's some dope shit, yo. You have your main dragon, which acts as your all-around well-balanced dragon. You have your fast dragon with great mobility but a weak weapon. And then you have your heavy dragon, which has powerful weapons but low mobility and no power glide move. You have your standard attack button, which when held down uses a lock-on attack to shoot homing projectiles at the enemy. You get a button that fires a special attack when your power bar is filled all the way up. You also get a glide boost button that will be necessary for fighting bosses and works to help you dodge enemy attacks. The 2 trigger buttons swing the camera around in 45 degrees, right or left. Push them at the same time and the camera swings around 180 degrees. I found this difficult to get the hang of using when I started out. It just seems more intuitive to just move the cursor on screen. So yeah, when it comes to combat, you basically just fly around and shoot stuff out of the sky or off the land. Controls work fine, and mastering switching between dragons is a must, especially towards the end of the game. The only real gripe I have about the controls, and thus the gameplay, is that maneuvering is a bit clunky. The dragons fly like things that fly, so the controls have a bit of delay to them, which makes dodging the obstacles the game throws at you later in the game a bit tricky to do. Definitely use the glide dragon for dodging stuff later in the game. That is my advice to you, my friends. On the HUD, in addition to your life bar, boost bar, and special bar, you get a radar to use. And this is really the first game I've played where a radar had been completely necessary. This little thing is your friend to no end, because you will be shooting things on your left and stuff will be coming at you from behind and from the front and the back and all points in between. You're gonna have guys coming at you from all sides like you're the new fish in the prison shower. But combat is pretty fun. It's hard to find fault in. You fly and shoot things. A lot of the time you will have to shoot projectiles out of the sky, and you'll have to shoot switches to open certain paths during levels. You do shoot projectiles out of the sky a lot. Expect to do it a couple of times a level. Bosses are often huge and amazing and require you to boost your way around them to either avoid attacks or reach a target you're supposed to shoot. This is indicated on the radar with red and blue arrows. Memorizing enemy attacks is key here. It's not entirely a game of trial and error when it comes to playing the game, but learning and recognizing when an enemy telegraphs their attacks is important. Oh, and did I mention you'll be shooting enemy projectiles out of the sky pretty much every fight? It's really essential to be able to shoot stuff on the fly. The game is also beautiful and later becomes a weird psychedelic trip. Really, shit gets weird. There are 10 levels in total. Sometimes the level will give you alternate paths to take, which adds some replay value for later on. The levels themselves are very beautiful and large. They often hint at a grandiose civilization that once existed. I absolutely love looking at some of these levels. A lot of the time, they are simply gorgeous, and I would be put in a situation where I had to attack something, but I'd rather just fly by and look at it. Just look at this herd of some type of animal just running across this beautiful plain on this plateau above a gorge. Like, just set me loose in this world, please. A lot of the landscape and stages really just sort of remind me of the mysterious setting within Shadow of the Colossus, you know? It's just like a forbidden world that you just want to explore and find secrets in and know about. You know what? Let's just go through all the levels real quick. I mean, it feels like one of those days where I should just go through the levels of a game. Stage 1. Stages are actually called episodes in this game. Episode 1 has you escaping this valley, flying through night and rain and a village while every member of the Empire tries to take you down. You escape into a temple or tunnel or some construction, whatever you would call this thing, and inside there's water and these giant spinning wheels that you have to dodge. The episode ends with you fighting a giant airship. How this thing flies, I have no idea. Episode 2 sees you flying through a swamp-like area chasing this giant giant worm creature along with some native people who have mistaken you for someone else. This level is beautiful, and it's levels like this that make me want to get into this game more. It's a good contrast between episode 1 and episode 2. In episode 1, you're in a dark, rocky area running for your life, and that switches up to episode 2, where you're surrounded by the lush beauty of nature. I did it, man. It feels like I'm on an adventure. It feels like in The Lion King when Simba escapes from the hyenas and then is found by Timon and Pumbaa and they take him to that really cool valley that's all freaking beautiful and shit. It sort of feels like that. But anyway, you're chasing after this creature and you chase it into some really dense forest area. You fight two of them in a fight that's really easy if you know when to dodge and shoot their projectiles out of the sky. Granted, that could be said about all the bosses in the game. After this, you're on a cliffside, flying underneath waterfalls, killing flying stingray things, and just look at how beautiful and colorful this all is. I could just look at this all day. Next, you fight a plant boss creature. This is the first time you have to boost around to reach an enemy's weak spot. After this, you're in episode 3, flying through a desert region, and after the swamp forest area, this is really sort of a disappointing level. It's sort of bland and barren. You fight some stuff, and then you fight the guys from the last episode because they mistake you for an Imperial soldier because you're flying a dragon, just like Imperial soldiers. After a short fight, you make peace, and these guys, the leader's name is Mobo, take you on a trip through a ravine because the surrounding area isn't safe. The level gets interesting here as it seems there have been a lot of large objects built in the ravine, and it gives off this mysterious vibe like there had been a large civilization here but has since died out. You come out of the ravine in this desolate area where there's lots of rocks. After a couple of fights, you do battle with this giant dog creature robot thing. It's a fun, frenetic fight. Afterward, your new friends take you to their village on top of a giant insect bug creature that has forests and streams and mountains on its back. Whoever the real estate agent was who sold them this property is a dick. The Empire then attacks. I believe this is episode 4. I've decided to stop counting, really. You fight the Empire's armada, and after they are destroyed, you fight a giant flying battleship. And after that, you fight a giant statue on top of the giant flying battleship. It is so immensely cool. Just going up these stairs towards the fight is pretty awesome. It's huge. It's cool. I love this. Once that's done, you fight some dragon mares. Defeating them gets you the prize of being blown out of the sky by the lead rider who kamikazes you. Episode 5, you wake up in the snow and have to scurry along the ground as your dragon mare has been wounded in such a way that it can't fly right at the moment, or something like that. This episode is alright. You fight a bunch of David Cronenberg type onion giant creatures, and the level goes from twilight to night. At the end, you run across this destroyed bridge and fight whatever this thing is. This guy, he's called a drone and is in some way important to the plot, shows up. He actually showed up in level 1, but he zipped away fairly quickly. He shows up here in level 5 and tells you to follow him. Episode 6 has you descending downward through these tunnels that look like bone. Since you're descending, the perspective gets thrown off because you have to shoot above and below you, even though you're like flying at a weird lopsided angle. It ain't great fun. Then you fly through these golden hallways shooting these switches to get by. Then episode 7 comes along to blow your brains away. The title of this video is Panzer Dragoon Orta was the psychedelic trip I wasn't ready for. And this level is the reason for that. Everything in this stage reminds me of every cover of every Spungle album I've ever seen. The music also matches to some degree. I was not anticipating this. It completely threw me off. Up is down and down is up. I don't know if I'm in the sky or if the sky is in me. Time has no relevance. All life is simply energy and light, and we're all just God fractured into a million pieces experiencing itself subjectively through the collective unconscious in this infinitesimally small expanse of infinity. Why would you put pizza on a bagel? And how does that translate into having pizza anytime? Yeah, level 7's really trippy, man. Episode 8 is like the final showdown. You get transported to what the Empire calls the Cradle, which is also the Imperial City. It's a pretty cool fight inside this huge structure where you can blow up trains, massive airships, the security dog thing, evil dragon fetuses, and loads of other stuff. Oh, and did I mention that you get to destroy evil dragon fetuses? Those are words I never thought I would ever say in my life. I can't believe I'm saying them. Kill evil dragon fetuses. The boss of this episode, I don't know how to describe. It's a giant transforming airship with giant transforming hands. It's a psychedelic transforming airship trip, man. And it's hard as nuts. After you beat this boss, the cradle shakes loose of its tethers and the dragon mares turn on the Empire. Episode 9, you fight a bunch of dragon mares, and episode 10, you fight, I don't know what this is. But you fight it, and it turns into one of those drone guys flying a dragon. This fight is tough. It's the last fight in the game, so it should be. Once it's over, your dragon dies for seemingly no reason. The credits roll, and you're pissed off at this point because of all your hard work and effort. Your dragon just ends up dying. Like, that's what your reward is. The credits end, and you get this title scene where Orta's walking with a baby dragon, and it's implied that she goes on to other pastures and adventures. Why the hell are the clouds moving so fast? Sadly, this is a really short game, but depending upon how long you play, you can actually unlock some extras. Panzer Dragoon Orta doesn't skimp on the unlockables to extend its replay value. For instance, after beating the game, you unlock the full first Panzer Dragoon game from the Sega Saturn. This is perhaps the best unlockable in any game I've ever played. It's one of the greats on the console, and I've never played it. I love it when games are hidden in other games. It's like Russian nesting dolls, only instead of being really stupid and boring dolls, they're video games. You can also unlock special levels where you can play as Mobo, or a sub-scenario where you play as a kid training in the Empire. Each of these characters plays differently, with the kid being the strangest. You can also unlock special challenges where you play as Orta on her baby dragon. You can also unlock artwork, text documents discussing the lore of the world and creatures. It's a pretty cool batch of unlockables, and I also gotta say that these menus, man, they're just psychedelic and trippy, dude. It reminds me of this one time I went to the beach and all, well, I'll save that story for another day. Panzer Dragoon Orta is a good game. I like this. It's a beautiful, if short, adventure, and it truly is a shame that Sega hasn't continued on the series in some way. As a matter of fact, it's just a shame Sega ain't done